How do you get 2.7 million impressions on your content without spending any money on advertising? Learn about it right here, right now. It's On Air Brands.
You are now tuned in to the On Air Brands podcast.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the On Air Brand Show. I am Todd Giannattasio along with my co-host Amber Fuhriman. Amber, what is up?
What's going on? It's good to see you. 2.7 million, huh?
Not too shabby, you know?
No,
Not too
you
shabby.
can't complain about that.
Yeah. So the hook today is basically off of I was going through some client dashboards the other day, and on one of the dashboards where I look more granularly on a regular basis, I don't look at the big picture except for our like annual reports, and I pulled up a 12-month report for a client, and we had 2.7 million Google search impressions, and overall I think it was about 90,000 website visits / clicks in the Google report there. So that's what we are talking about today. Like, how does that happen? And I will say who I'm talking to specifically today, our audience, are the people who are creating content, putting out shows, podcasts, videos. If you're putting out social media content regularly, let's say you have over 200 episodes of a podcast. Maybe it's even called
cataloged.
Maybe it's even called More Than Corporate, and yet you're not getting thousands of visitors on your website every month. That's who I'm talking to today, because it means that you are putting in all the hard work necessary to get these tens of thousands of visits, millions of impressions on your content. You're doing the hard stuff. What you need to do is just take a little more strategic approach to it and do a little bit of polishing on the back end, and you will really see that hockey stick of growth when you're consistent, like we always talk about doing.
Yeah, I think that that's so important to point out when you said you're doing the hard stuff, because it really is like you're doing all the work and it just takes a couple of little tweaks on the back end. So I was talking to somebody about a social media strategy and how do you get more eyes out and how do you do all of this stuff. And I'm like putting out all of the things that I do and all of the podcast and the Facebook group and all of this stuff. And I was like, I have all the pieces, just nobody knows about them. And I keep going back to this because I'm a huge baseball fan and it's baseball season. Oh, my poor Red Sox last night was not a good experience. But
I did not know that you are a Red Sox fan.
I am a Red Sox fan.
All right.
Well,
I'm Jersey. I basically grew up at Yankee Stadium, so we'll put that aside. We'll battle that out after our friends debate here.
I was going to say, we'll put that in the same bucket that you not being a Friends fan is in. But I keep going back to this idea that if you build it, they will come. And I think that that's the way that so many podcasters work, right? And business owners in general is, if I create this, I'm going to put in all the work. I'm going to make the amazing products. I'm going to put my name on the door outside. I'm going to open the door and they're just going to flood in because that's what they're supposed to do. And then real life hits you and you start figuring out how you can get people to see what you're doing.
Yeah. To stick with the baseball analogy, I would also say, kind of what you're doing is you are out on the field. You are taking 1,000 swings a day. You are high batting average when you're there on the field. You're knocking out home runs. Everything looks good. You're fast running around the bases. Except for that, you're just at the local park and you're hitting off of like your friend who's lobbing, and you're not on a major league field, right? So all we got to do is take all that same work you're doing and just put you in a different place, and now all of a sudden you're going to be making millions of dollars as off your contract. You'll win the World Series and all these things just because you're putting all that same work just at a different place, right? So we got to take everybody up. If you are putting out a show, if you're producing content, even if it's just social media content on a regular basis, I'd urge you to make a little bit of a shift and repurposing of that, because once we really take the content that you're producing, whether it's on YouTube, podcasts, social, email, right? Some people are sending out email marketing, which is great, but if that's the only place it lives, let's use it as a more leveraged asset. And that's where I really love search engine optimization and content production and promotion, is because these are leveraged assets, right? Like we have, I don't even know how it came up, but the other day in Slack with my team, Danielle, who's worked with me for like 8 years, she dropped a link in Slack to this blog post about graphic design and content marketing. And she's like, oh man, she's like, I think this was like the first blog post I ever wrote. So I pulled up Google Analytics and looked at like an 8-year period. And for the first like 6 months, you see like a little blip, like 12 visits or something, like, very little. And then like for a 3-year period, there was like 20,000 visits. And then it started to dip off again after that. And it's like, when you're doing the work of creating content, if you pick the right topics and then you structure it properly to be optimized, like you can put in work. How long does it take to create an episode? Even if you take a few hours on the long end, now all of a sudden for the next 3-4 years, you're going to be getting thousands and thousands of visits. That one piece of content that you produced, like that's the power of just having the right strategy and game plan around the hard work that you're already doing of producing content.
Yeah, and we talked about this a little bit. I think it was last episode where we were talking about the fact that organic content really doesn't exist anymore. Like you don't find anything that you're not looking for. And I think that was our Facebook ads conversation that we were having.
Two totally different things. So
see, and that's why I'm here to show all the no.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I remember the most that I just want to start this conversation off with as we move into everything is when I reached out to you to talk about some SEO for potentially my law firm. And this is one of the things that I really respected about what you do is I reached out and I said, hey, I need SEO. And you were like, okay, let's talk about what you really need. Because like 90% of the time people reach out to me and they're like, I need SEO. And that's not what you need. So for those people, what is SEO and who actually should be having the conversation about it?
Yeah, for sure. So one, to clarify on what we talked about last week, which was episode 29, how to build your brand and gain listeners by utilizing Facebook ads. If you post something on your Facebook page, your business page, very few, if anyone, will see it. Even if you have, thousands of followers on your fan page, a dozen people might see a post unless you put money behind it. That's organic social media marketing. On the flip side, what we're talking about today is organic Google optimization, right? So like you can run Google ads where you can pay Google every time someone searches a word and clicks on, Las Vegas law firm, they click on it, they click on your ad, they go to your website. That's Google ads. What I'm talking about is like beyond the ads. When you scroll down, those are what's called organic search listings, right? And so we're talking about showing up there with your content. And so that's where the power of all this stuff comes into play. And back to your main question here. So, is SEO for you is thinking about, are people searching online for what it is that you do or what you talk about, right? And so in your business, we want to look at the customer journey, right? And so a lot of your people who are clients are in a pinch and need to get in touch with somebody right away. And so, yes, you want to show up like at the top for people who need to call, but more likely your business and industry revolves around referrals and stuff like that. And so it was like, all right, does it make sense? What's the customer journey look like for someone that I want to do business with? It actually, we're going to have better, yes, we want to have a little bit of a presence here, but we want to focus more time and effort in these other areas. So what you want to think about is, are the people that you want to do business with, are they searching on Google for different topics around what you do? And, does it make sense for you to show up there? Or maybe you have to think about a different person, right? So now what an SEO strategy for a law firm, which we won't go down this rabbit hole, but would be like, out of the gate, your question is, people who need a lawyer are Googling X, Y, and Z. And should I come up there? Or is it like other lawyers in different areas of expertise are searching for different topics? Those are the people I actually want to meet with. Like, how can I connect with them? So that's where we distinguished, was number one, like customer journey and what's the most optimal way to build the business. So if our listeners here, if you have determined that the customer journey does involve searching Google for information or solving problems, then that's where you want to show up, right? And so if the customer journey is 10 minutes because like this was their one phone call, right? Like, did they switch that yet? Like, instead of a one phone call, can I get one Google search? Like,
That's awesome. That's
right.
awesome.
So,
So it just takes a little bit of somebody sitting down and saying, how does my client find me?
mhm.
And where do I need to show up more? And if the answer to how does my client find me is Google, then we're talking SEO.
Yep, exactly. And it's like if there is a buyer journey or a customer journey around multiple topics that you can talk about for your business, then that's where you have the opportunity to show up on Google because they're looking for something. If it is like short-term fix of like, hey, I need to Knicks tickets, for instance. Today's opening day, not to date, not to timestamp, but Knicks first game is tonight. So I Googled Knicks tickets, Ticketmaster's at the top. There's the tickets. Like, that's what I'm looking for. Very short, like, okay, here's how much they are. Here's, am I going to go or not? But if we're talking about, business services, higher ticket products or services, like where people are doing research around it, or like, how do I solve this problem? What do I need to know about these different things? Right. When people are asking questions and need to learn about what it is that you do, then that's where really, SEO comes into play. And if you have a podcast, if you have a show and you're listening to us, like, then you're putting that content out and you want it to get found, then you want to be optimizing it so people can find it on search. Otherwise, you publish it this week, you post it on social media, you send it to your email list, and after 4 days, no one ever sees that episode again, right? This is what creates longevity and compound growth for the content that you're producing.
And it sounds so much less painful than the way that most people do it. And I fall in the category of most people, which is, okay, what episode do I want to highlight this week? How do I send that out? How do I revive this episode? Who do I tag it in? Like, how do I do this without overloading people? Because I have 2 other episodes coming out this week, and I also want to talk about this content. And you sit there and you step back, and by you, I mean I step back and think, man, this is hard. And it's only hard because I'm making it hard. So if
Right.
you're listening and you're out there saying SEO has always been hard, getting my stuff heard has always been hard, first of all, I'm with you. And second of all, this is kind of where you need to be.
Right, exactly. And so if it's been hard, here's really the gist of how it works and how to make it easy. Is number one, knowing who your customer is, right? We've talked about that several times on previous episodes, and understanding like what is their state of awareness, right? Like, are they problem aware? Are they solution aware? Are they looking for a deal on a specific type of product, right? Like, think about all those different things. Quora.com, Quora.com is a great like question and answer site. So you can actually go in there and type in a topic and it'll show you all questions people are actually asking. And really what it comes down to is making your content based on, number one, relevancy to your business, but number two, what people are actually searching for, right? So if you are creating content, creating episodes, publishing this stuff on your blog, on your YouTube channel, in Apple, Spotify, etc., and you're just like coming up with random ideas for your episodes, it might only be the fact that you need to change the phrasing of it, right? So like, we ran an episode a few weeks ago. I can't remember which one off the top of my head, but Rob and I were talking about like what the title should be. Email marketing for your podcast, right? So episode number 24, how to do email marketing for your podcast. And Rob was like, hey, what should the title be? And like, I think he suggested first, whatever it was I said in that first line. And I was like, hang on, let me just do some quick keyword research, right? And so like, if we use the first line that I said, which is kind of like more about curiosity and intrigue, right? Like if we titled this episode, how to get 2.7 million impressions, well, no one's looking for the words, how to get 2.7 million impressions. But if we titled this, how to do SEO for your podcast, there's a lot of people searching for how to do SEO for your podcast. And the only difference was we just made the title more descriptive around what people are looking for, right? So this is why, modern marketing needs to be clear over clever, right? Like, everybody likes to get cute with their titles and stuff like that, but you need to just be clear and talk and use the words that people understand and are looking for. And that can make all the difference in the world between, our regular subscribers hear the episode this week and that's it, versus over the next 12 months, everyone who searches for podcast email marketing is going to be able to find our episode, right? And so just understanding like what are the topics your customer is asking about online, and doing there's some free different and a lot of paid keyword research tools, but just understanding like, oh, if I said it this way, like I was gonna, there's 0 people searching. But if I just change the phrase, which is still the same exact topic, there's 10,000 people searching. You've already put yourself in position. And that's what I was talking about with the baseball field before, right? Like if you're cranking out home runs because you're in the batting cages, it doesn't matter. But when you crank out home runs on the field of a Major League Baseball game, now you're making tens of millions of dollars, right? And so the key word is just getting you in the right game.
Yeah, I think what's really cool about this conversation is everybody has sat back and thought at one point in time, they've looked at a business that's similar to theirs or a podcast that's similar to theirs, and they've seen that success that they're having. And they look back and they think, oh, it must be the guests they're getting. Let me get more well-known guests. And then they do that and they realize that that doesn't make a difference. And it, we've talked about this in past episodes when it comes to finding that person who has what you want and modeling it. But the really important thing is modeling what you don't know, right? So there's all this stuff that goes on behind the scenes that makes that podcast successful that you don't see. And this is just another one of those things.
Yeah. So I'm going to pick on you live here because
I
love you and I know you could take it and I know that you want the tough love. So I'm heading over to morethancorporate.com, which is Amber's amazing podcast. And she talks about, designing success and all that kind of stuff. Because we're streaming live, my browser's moving a little slow. Here we go. All right. So I'm on your podcast page here. We got a list of all your episodes and our latest episodes. And here we go. Andrew Myers, Ji-Yoon Kim, Daniel Blue, Jessica Tejan. I don't know how to say that right. So really all the titles on this page are just the guest's name, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, let me click through. Let's check out Andrew Myers. We'll give it a second, but how many people are searching for these individual guests, right? Like probably not many. And especially someone like Andrew Myers, even if there is, that's probably a million different guys with that name, right? But when we get over to the episode, right, we have, I have multiple screens here and I'm kind of blocking myself. So bear with me, but you have titled this Losing the Fear of No, right? So we're getting better, right? Like no one is probably searching Andrew Myers. And if they are, it's not relevant to you or the topic you're talking about, most likely, especially with a more generic name. Maybe if they're searching Todd Giannattasio, Amber Fuhriman, we have pretty unique names, right? Like that's good. But when we get into Losing the Fear of No, right? So that's like the title that people could potentially be searching for, which is a little bit better than just the guest name. But even if you were to say like, okay, this is kind of like the clever title version that you took, right? Now, if we were to take 10 minutes of keyword research, and I'm going to make this up for the sake of conversation and not slow us down. But if we were to say like Losing the Fear of No is where we're at now with our clever title around the topic. But if we were to do 5 minutes of keyword research, we may discover that there's 0 people searching for this, but there's 100,000 people searching for how to get over the fear of saying no or being told no. And now all of a sudden, all we do is just change that title. And we went from having 0 opportunity of this episode getting found to 100,000 potential per month getting found, right? And so that's like really real life example of the difference between like clever titles or, too simple or too generic versus like, hey, let me just put in a little bit of work ahead of time and put myself in a better chance for success.
Yeah. So first of all, I'm going to say you're welcome, guys, for this real life example. And I was thinking about it. There's a time in my life where I would have been like so embarrassed and be like, oh my gosh, I'm not doing it right. And I just realized that like the reason that I've gotten to where I am in my life is because I've become completely okay with being people's real life examples of what not to do. Right.
Yeah.
Like it's been amazing. So I stay in my wheelhouse and then I let people use me as what not to do. I love that feedback. And it's really interesting because as content creators, I think many times we focus on the content, we focus on getting that recorded and making that quality. And then everything after that, this is where you come in, that's where we need the help. So I love that.
And so to say, and I didn't listen to this week's episode yet, so I'm not sure if this is an accurate assumption, but the fear of no gets essentially 0 searches per month. The fear of rejection, which I'm guessing could potentially be another phrasing of the topic of this episode, the fear of rejection gets 2.6 thousand, right? So we automatically, just by changing that title a little bit, still 100% relevant. Now we have way more opportunity for this episode of the podcast to be a compounding asset for the More Than Corporate show, as opposed to either just Andrew Meyer or the fear of no, right? So that's the power of what we're talking about here. And what
Yeah.
that literally took me 2 minutes to do.
Yeah. And for all of you who are listening and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I don't even know where to start. The answer is anywhere, because that 0 to 1, and this is something that I have to constantly remind myself of, is you're not going to get all of your episodes taken care of and fixed all at once.
Right.
However, if you just do one and then another one and then another one, and you start moving forward, then it becomes a better situation for you. So just remember that 0 to 1 is much better than doing nothing at all. Because it's so easy to feel overwhelmed by all the things that you're not doing right when you're in this head. So
I think the biggest mistake and difference that people can make when it comes to their show plans and optimizing content is just doing the research up front on like, what is the proper phrasing that we should be using, and that we just put a great live example there. And then again, to use you as the guinea pig here. And this is also like, we could go into this in a mindset episode, but like, how much time have you spent learning and working on search engine optimization?
Is there like a less than 0 option?
Exactly my point. And so there's no reason, and I imagine most of our listeners are in the same boat. And so there's no reason to feel guilty or ashamed around not knowing something you never learned, right? Like that's, if I was able to start calling you out on some kind of defense attorney strategy, that's a totally different ballpark. But like, you shouldn't know SEO. It's not your job, right? Like, that's why you hire experts to do it. And so there's no reason to feel guilty or ashamed when you're in this position because this isn't your job. You have spent 0 time or effort so far trying to learn it or understand it. So like, that's why we're here. That's why we do our show, to put that kind of value out. So now people can make educated decisions on either learning more on their own or, just being more educated and empowered when it comes to hiring somebody. So the next thing is, we've planned our podcast episodes, right? We've talked about, if you guys jump back to, episode number 27, or no, I'm sorry, episode number 26, Start Your Podcast with a Bang. That's where we really go through like episode strategy, coming up with your content topics. Now, if you take that next level and you do or hire somebody to do some keyword research for you, so now you can have the right phrasing around the topics. Now you've recorded your episodes, you publish it, it's great content. You are doing a great thing on your site here, where you are publishing not just the audio clip, but you do have a full show notes amount of text, right? Like, I don't know how many words are here, but a few hundred words, right? So now when Google's looking to rank things, they need to be reading the text that's on the page. So having show notes is super clutch when it comes to that. Now, what you're missing here is a little more context in your show notes. So there's no... we have some bold text that just says on this episode and tweetable quotes, which are all awesome things to have. What we want to have is some supporting titles underneath that. So if we had our main title being, losing the fear of rejection, so we have that main thing. And then we have a couple subtitles in there that just support, other relevant things that you talked about that are supporting that same fear of rejection, right? Like how to get over the fear of rejection. And then whatever you talked about, just having them broken down into sections, tips for getting over the fear of rejection, misconceptions, et cetera, whatever, but having those as kind of subtitles will help optimize this actual page a little bit. So having show notes is awesome. That's way more than a lot of people have. Number 2 would be just having the show notes structured a little bit more optimized with some subheadings in there. And so that's when you're publishing it. So now you have the right topics that you learned from us over in episode number 26. You have an understanding that you need to do some keyword research that you learned today. I use a paid tool called Ahrefs. There's another, used to be free. It's called Keywords Everywhere. They had to make it paid. It's like literally, I think it's $1 because they had some kind of like spam attack. So they were like, they had to put a credit card thing on top of it. And also Google Keyword Research Tool is a little more robust, but it is free. But there's a lot of tools out there for people who want to like really take a deep dive into this, or just go out and hire somebody to do some keyword research for you to get just search volume versus competition. Because you also want to pick words that you're going to be able to rank for, right? If it's super high competition and you look and it's like really big time names with really great content and huge sites, huge brands that are on the first page of Google, you may not be able to beat them. So you want to look for opportunities in there. But just knowing that people are searching for the topics that you're talking about is going to be really great. And then now you've published it. You've published an optimized episode. Super awesome. And then there's a little bit of technical SEO magic that can happen on the back end. Again, I don't want to bore people with that and glaze their ear balls over in the episode. If this is intriguing to you, you can do your own research on it, or hit me up on Facebook and ask me. I'll point you to some resources. But then it's, of course, like, tell your existing audience, like, get the word out, like we've talked about before, post it on social, run a couple dollars of ads behind it to drive traffic, ask your guests to promote it. So one of the biggest factors when it comes to ranking your site is getting links back to your website. So that means, like, if you write an article, somebody else links over to your article, or, like, when I say article, I mean a post. So it's an episode, right? And so similarly, like, if you're writing a paper and you cite something, you're basically saying, like, hey, this resource that I'm citing is a good place of information. And so if other websites are using you as a reference, that tells Google that you are an authority in this space and you're an important member of this, topic and industry, and they will start ranking you higher because of that. So if you have guests on your show, giving them some content to put on their own website and link back to their episode on your website is going to be super low hanging fruit, an easy way for you to build up links for your site. So make sure your guests are promoting it and all that kind of stuff too. So that's kind of very high level ish about, like, the flywheel that we run when it comes to, like, plan out the right content, make sure you're picking picking the right keywords for it, create great episodes, which you're already doing. That's the hardest part for everyone who is not a content creator. And so really just doing a little bit of the strategic work up front, and then doing a little bit of the technical work on the back after it's published, and really going to amplify the hard work you're putting into producing your show already, and turn your audience from whatever it is to a magnitude higher in terms of visibility and audience attraction.
Yeah, what's screaming at me right now as you're talking is really making that website the hub of your content instead of any other source. And I know there's so many things that are going through my head that I could easily switch. For example, I have my YouTube channel where I put the videos on, but I don't embed those to my website. So then when I share the YouTube, I'm sharing YouTube, and instead I should be embedding those into my website. So I'm sharing my website. But this goes along to the episodes that we've talked about in the past about just getting your stuff off of just social media and creating this hub for you that you have control over, that you can grow. And we've talked about that in the email marketing sense, but this goes hand in hand with that to be able to lead people to one single hub that will help in your optimization. And so it's really cool when we start discussing how those things play together. And I appreciate your insight on this flywheel in this episode, because it shows that you're doing all the right things. And like you said in that baseball analogy, like, your shortstop's just in the wrong position, right? It's not in a place that he's ever going to, like, if you have your shortstop at first base, ain't going to do any good, right? So just making sure that you're all playing for the same team and you're in the right spot.
Yeah, totally. And I think, let's make next week's episode will be about how to build out and plan your website hub for your show. Because I think there's a lot of easy, low-hanging fruit for people to understand when it comes to that they might be missing out on. So make sure you guys are subscribed to On Air Brands, onairbrands.com/show, or in your favorite podcast listening platform. So next episode, we will dive into that and talk about all the factors. And, if you are interested, I am going to be doing a free training, and this will be up most likely forever, or as long as I'm in business and online. If you go to thegrowthsuite.com/digital flywheel, I'm going to be releasing a training in the next week about kind of going into more of this whole plan, produce, publish, promote flywheel to build up your brand online, build an engaged audience, and how you can do that on multiple channels, like Amber said. So it's like, we're creating great content, we're amplifying it on social to get people seeing us right away, but we're doing it in an optimized way so that over time these are going to become compound assets for the business through search engines and put into our email marketing automated sequences and evergreen promotions. So thegrowthsuite.com/digital flywheel for that free training. If you like this episode, please make sure that you guys are subscribed, onairbrands.com/show. If you haven't taken the dive yet into actually creating a show for your business, make sure you talk to Eric and the guys at On Air Brands. So that's onairbrands.com to talk about getting a show launched for your business. And, if you do want to see some good examples and what will be better, go to morethancorporate.com, but also check out Amber's show if you are an entrepreneur, because that's a great show on mindset and business building and all that kind of cool stuff. She's got a lot of great guests already and a lot of great guests lined up that she was telling me about behind the scenes. So make sure you check her out at More Than Corporate. And as always, we will catch you guys on the next episode.
You are now tuned in to the On Air